Aries, let me ask you something. Have you felt it lately? That quiet pressure behind you, like someone was watching your rise, not cheering for it. You didn't imagine that feeling, and no, this is not random. There has been a woman who smiled on the surface, but carried resistance in her silence. Someone who wanted you to slow down, without ever saying your name. Tonight, that energy collapses, the mask cracks, and the truth steps forward. Before we go any deeper, ground yourself right now. Type in the comments, "I trust my instincts," because Aries, what you're about to hear isn't meant to scare you. It's meant to confirm something your soul already knows. Stay with me. The real story is just beginning. Take a breath with me for a moment, not a rushed one, a real one. The kind that reaches deep into your chest and reminds you that you are still here. Because what you are stepping into right now is not coincidence, and it never was. There are moments in life when everything suddenly feels heavier than it should. Not dramatic, just dense. Like you are walking forward, but something unseen keeps pressing against your back. You still move, but each step takes more effort than it used to. If you felt that, Aries, you weren't weak, you weren't distracted. You were sensing a shift before it had a name. Some chapters don't announce themselves with noise. They arrive quietly. Through exhaustion you can't explain, through hesitation that doesn't belong to you, through the strange feeling that your fire had to burn a little slower, even though your soul was ready to run. That wasn't you losing momentum. That was energy rearranging itself around you. You see, certain truths wait for the right temperature. Too early, and they would burn you. Too late, and they would trap you. So, life timed it carefully. Every delay, every pause, every unanswered question. Nothing was wasted. There is a reason your intuition kept tapping you on the shoulder. Soft at first, almost polite, then firmer, more insistent. As if it was saying, "Pay attention. Something here does not match the light it claims to be." And still, you didn't react. You didn't accuse. You didn't fight shadows with noise. That restraint wasn't fear. It was wisdom you didn't even know you had yet. Because Aries, real strength doesn't rush to prove itself. It observes. It waits. It lets truth reveal its own cracks. While you kept moving forward, life was aligning behind the scenes. Threads you couldn't see were tightening. Patterns were repeating just enough for the universe to say, "Now it's clear. Now it's undeniable." What you're feeling now, that subtle sense of relief, that quiet clarity settling into your body, is the signal. Something no longer has access to you. The pressure lifts first, then the fog. Then the realization comes softly, almost tenderly, like light entering a room that's been closed for too long. You weren't wrong, you were early. And being early can feel lonely, it can feel confusing, it can make you doubt your own fire. But listen to me carefully here. That fire was never meant to burn blindly. It was meant to illuminate. What comes next isn't about confrontation, it's about understanding, about seeing the full picture without anger, without bitterness, without needing to tear anything down. Just clarity, clean, sharp, freeing. So, stay with me. Not because you need answers handed to you, but because something is about to fall into place, naturally, gently, in a way that lets you move forward lighter than before. And once you feel that shift completely, you'll know the story isn't ending, it's opening. There is something I want to say to you quietly now. Not loudly, not dramatically, just honestly. Because this part of the story was never obvious. It lived in the space between moments, in pauses you didn't question, in glances that felt slightly off but never loud enough to accuse. There was a woman around you, close enough to observe, far enough to stay hidden. On the surface, she seemed calm, balanced, even kind in her own way. The kind of presence that doesn't raise alarms at first. The kind you wouldn't suspect, even if your instincts whispered something soft in the background. But underneath that stillness, something else was happening. A quiet resistance. A subtle hope that you might slow down, that you might hesitate, that you might lose your sense of direction just enough for her to feel steadier in her own world. She never needed to say it out loud, her energy did the speaking. You see, she watched you more than you realized. Not casually, not accidentally, but with attention. She noticed how you moved forward without asking for permission, how you built momentum on your own, how you didn't wait for validation before trusting yourself. That independence stayed with her longer than she wanted to admit. And every time you took another step, it reminded her of a step she never took. Your growth became a mirror she didn't ask for, a reflection of courage she hadn't chosen. And instead of turning inward to face that discomfort, she turned outward, quietly, carefully, from the shadows. This wasn't loud jealousy. It wasn't obvious hostility. It was something more restrained, more controlled, the kind that hides behind politeness and neutral expressions. But, Aries, your soul felt it anyway. You may remember moments where the room felt slightly colder, conversations that suddenly shifted tone, a presence that stayed longer than necessary, as if measuring you instead of meeting you. You didn't react, not because you didn't notice, but because some part of you knew that reacting would give energy to something that didn't deserve it. That restraint wasn't silence out of fear, it was instinctive protection, because when you are truly aligned, you don't chase shadows. You let them reveal themselves. She mistook your calm for unawareness. She mistook your focus for distraction. She believed you were too busy becoming yourself to notice what stood behind you. And that was her greatest miscalculation. Your awareness has always been deeper than your reactions. You see without needing to confront. You sense without needing to name. And while she observed you, life was observing her. Every unspoken intention carries weight. Every silent wish has direction. Energy remembers what the mouth never admits. You didn't need to expose anything. You didn't need to defend your light. You simply kept moving, and that movement shifted everything. Right now, as you listen, you may feel a strange mix of clarity and calm. Not anger, not triumph, just understanding. That is the moment when the story begins to turn, not with confrontation, not with noise, but with truth stepping closer on its own. Stay here with me, because once you see how this unfolds, you'll understand why nothing ever had to be forced. The next layer reveals itself quietly, and when it does, everything you sensed will finally make sense. There was a moment when you knew, not all at once, not as a clear thought, more like a quiet signal that passed through you and stayed. It showed up in small ways. A look that lingered just a second too long. A pause in a conversation that felt misplaced. A shift in tone so subtle that no one else would notice. But you did. And you didn't rush to name it. You let it sit. You let it breathe. Because some truths do not want to be dragged into the light. They want to walk there on their own. You felt the imbalance, Aries. That sense that something was slightly misaligned. Not dramatic, not threatening. Just enough to tell your intuition to stay alert. Still, you chose silence. Not the kind that swallows you. The kind that steadies you. You didn't confront. You didn't question out loud. You didn't try to explain yourself to anyone. You didn't feel the need to defend your direction or your decisions. And that choice says more about your strength than any reaction ever could. Because when you truly know who you are, you stop needing to prove it. You understood something instinctively, that lowering yourself into conflict would cost you more than it would reveal, that exposing someone before they were ready would only entangle you in their story. So you kept your energy clean. You stayed focused on what mattered. You let your actions speak without commentary. That wasn't avoidance. That was discernment. Aries, there is a maturity that comes from trusting your inner fire without letting it burn everything in its path. You've learned that not every battle is yours to fight. Some are meant to collapse under their own weight. And while others mistook your calm for ignorance, you were simply choosing elevation over reaction. You noticed the inconsistencies. You noticed the way warmth faded when your progress became undeniable. You noticed how support softened into distance without explanation. But instead of tightening your grip, you loosened it. That is power most people never learn. Because real confidence does not shout. It listens. It watches. It allows truth to reveal itself without force. You didn't need confirmation from the outside. Your body already knew. Your intuition already marked the pattern. You trusted yourself enough to wait. And waiting did not weaken you. It sharpened you. Each moment of restraint strengthened your clarity. Each choice to stay grounded protected your momentum. Each step forward quietly rewrote the narrative around you. You were not standing still. You were moving with intention. And while you continued building your life, something else was unfolding behind the scenes. Something that did not depend on your involvement. Energy has a way of reorganizing itself when left alone. What is false eventually destabilizes. What is unsustainable begins to fracture. You didn't push, you didn't pull, you simply allowed space for truth to breathe. And now, as you listen to this, you may feel that familiar calm returning, that sense of inner alignment, that quiet knowing settling deeper into your chest. This is the moment when silence proves its value, because what comes next does not arrive through confrontation. It arrives through exposure, through patterns becoming too visible to deny, through masks losing their grip naturally. Stay with me. You are about to see how your stillness created movement, and how choosing not to react became the very thing that changed everything. The story continues to unfold, and it does so gently. There is something important you need to understand here, and I want you to hear it without tension, without tightening your chest. Just let it land gently. What happened to you was never loud. It didn't come with confrontation or open conflict. There were no raised voices, no obvious attacks. That was intentional. She didn't move toward you, she moved around you. While you were focused on building your life, she was shaping narratives in spaces you weren't standing in. Small conversations, casual remarks, questions that sounded innocent but carried an edge. Nothing that could be easily pointed to. Nothing dramatic enough to defend against. That's how manipulation prefers to operate, quietly, indirectly, through suggestion rather than accusation. She spoke behind your back, not to destroy you all at once, but to slowly bend perception, to plant doubt where there had been trust, to soften confidence into uncertainty. And she did it where you couldn't hear it, because distortion only works when the truth isn't in the room. She wanted others to question your intentions, to wonder about your motives, to feel unsure about your character without ever knowing why. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your presence made her feel exposed. Your clarity unsettled her. Your independence challenged her sense of control. You didn't need approval, and that was dangerous to someone who survives on influence. So, she tried to weaken your position without showing her hand. A careful strategy, calculated, designed to keep her image clean while slowly smudging yours. But here is where she misjudged you, Aries. She assumed your strength came from reaction. She believed if she shifted enough opinions, you would feel the need to explain yourself, to defend, to chase understanding. She didn't understand that your power doesn't live in other people's perceptions. It lives in alignment. You didn't bend, you didn't panic, you didn't try to control what was being said about you. You stayed where you were, centered, moving forward anyway. And that is where everything began to turn, because manipulation depends on participation, on engagement, on emotional hooks, and you gave her none. Every time she tried to pull strings, the lack of reaction weakened the structure she was building. Every whispered doubt collapsed under the weight of your consistency. Every half-truth lost momentum because your actions stayed whole. She underestimated something fundamental about Aries, that when your energy is clean, lies have nowhere to attach. You don't need to correct every story. You don't need to chase every misunderstanding. Truth doesn't require management when it's lived. And slowly, without you doing anything at all, the distortions began to show cracks. People started noticing the inconsistencies, the subtle contradictions, the emotional charge behind words that were supposed to be neutral. What she thought was control started to feel forced. What she thought was influence began to look transparent. And you were still moving forward, unbothered, unentangled. That contrast became impossible to ignore. Right now, as you listen, you may feel something settling in your body, a quiet validation, not pride, not vindication, just understanding. Because this part of the story isn't about betrayal, it's about clarity, and clarity always prepares the ground for exposure, not through confrontation, but through imbalance becoming visible. Stay with me. Because once manipulation loses its disguise, it doesn't fade quietly, it reveals itself. And what comes next is where the mask can no longer hold. The story keeps unfolding, naturally. There is a moment in every story where something becomes clear without being explained. You feel it before you understand it, a quiet realization, almost calm. This is that moment. Because what she never understood and never could is the nature of your energy. Aries energy does not bend easily. It does not twist itself to fit expectations. It does not dilute itself to stay comfortable for others. it moves straight, with intention, with honesty. And that is exactly why it cannot be distorted for long. She believed that words could reshape reality, that enough repetition could soften truth. That suggestion could slowly rewrite who you were in the eyes of others. But energy listens more deeply than language ever could. While she spoke from calculation, you lived from alignment. While she adjusted narratives, you stayed consistent in action. And consistency is something deception cannot survive. Every sentence she spoke with a double meaning carried tension. Every attempt to sound neutral while intending harm created imbalance. That imbalance did not touch you. It returned to her. Because when words are not rooted in truth, they begin to collapse inward. They contradict each other. They reveal strain. You may not have seen it immediately, but others began to feel it. Subtle things, questions that no longer landed the way she expected. Silence where agreement used to be. A pause before belief. That is how distortion unravels. Not all at once, but quietly. From the inside. She thought your strength came from reaction. She believed that if she applied enough pressure, you would crack, you would explain, you would defend. But Aries does not operate that way. Your power does not rise from confrontation. It rises from clarity. You did not chase rumors. You did not correct perceptions. You did not lower yourself into chaos to prove your innocence. You kept moving. And that movement became undeniable evidence. Instead of weakening you, her actions exposed the gap between her words and reality, between intention and outcome, between appearance and truth. And people notice gaps like that, even when they cannot name them. What she believed was strategy became self-sabotage. What she thought was control became transparency. The more she tried to manage perception, the more unstable her own image became. This was not punishment. There was no hand pushing her down, no force acting against her. It was consequence. Energy always returns to its source, not out of cruelty, but out of balance. You didn't need to wish her harm. You didn't need justice spoken aloud. You didn't need validation. Your alignment did the work. Aries, this is something important to carry forward. When you stay true to yourself, you do not need to fight distortion. It dissolves on its own. And right now, as you listen, you may feel a deep steadiness settling in. Not excitement, not triumph. Peace. That peace is the signal that something has corrected itself, that something false has lost its grip, that your energy is no longer being pulled or tested. You are standing in your truth without resistance. And when that happens, what was built on manipulation cannot remain standing. Stay with me. Because when illusion collapses, the next thing that follows is exposure. Not loud, not dramatic, but undeniable. And once that begins, the story moves into a completely new phase, one where clarity takes the lead. And this is where everything began to shift in a way you could feel, even if you didn't see it yet. Because control, when it is built on manipulation, is always fragile. It looks solid only as long as no one leans on it too hard. Recently, something slipped from her hands. A situation she believed she could manage. A space where her usual tactics had always worked before, but this time, they didn't. She tried the same approach, the same tone, the same quiet steering of perception, but the energy wasn't responding anymore. What once felt persuasive now felt forced. What once sounded convincing now felt rehearsed. And the strain began to show. You weren't watching this happen. You didn't need to. Life was handling it on your behalf. People around her began to notice small things, not accusations, not dramatic revelations, just discomfort, a hesitation before believing her words, a pause where trust used to flow easily, a subtle awareness that what she said and what she did no longer aligned, and misalignment is impossible to hide forever. The mask started to crack, not because someone attacked it, but because it could no longer hold its shape. Too many contradictions, too many adjustments, too much effort to maintain something that was never real. You may have felt this moment energetically before it became visible, a sense that something loosened, that a pressure you carried without naming was suddenly lighter. That was the moment her control broke. When manipulation loses its effect, it turns inward. It creates panic instead of influence, overcorrection instead of strategy, and panic always exposes itself. She began reacting instead of guiding, explaining instead of suggesting, defending instead of appearing neutral. Those shifts are subtle, but unmistakable to people who were paying attention. And they were. The same people she believed she had convinced started questioning quietly. The same spaces where her words once held weight began to feel unstable. Not because you intervened, not because you demanded clarity, but because truth does not need reinforcement. It simply waits. Aries, this part matters, because you did nothing to cause her fall. You did not push, you did not provoke, you did not expose. You stayed in your lane, you stayed in your integrity, you stayed in your rhythm. And that contrast became impossible to ignore. When one person is steady and another is constantly adjusting, the difference speaks louder than any explanation. The mask slipped, not all at once, but enough. Enough that her credibility wavered. Enough that her words lost their authority. Enough that the story she tried to control began telling itself. This collapse was not dramatic for you. It didn't arrive with celebration or noise. It arrived with clarity, a quiet understanding that something had ended. And once something like this ends, it does not rebuild itself, because the foundation is gone. As you listen now, you may feel a strange sense of distance from it all, almost like it happened in another lifetime. That is because the energetic tie has already weakened. What was once close is now behind you, and what comes next is not about watching anyone fall. It's about realizing you are no longer carrying their weight. Stay with me, because when a mask fully breaks, what follows is not chaos. It is release, and that release opens space for something new to enter your life. And this is where you begin to notice something quietly beautiful. Not all at once, not dramatically, just a shift. You wake up one morning and the air feels lighter in your chest. You take a breath and it goes deeper than it has in a long time. Your shoulders drop without you telling them to. That is not imagination. That is release. For so long, you were carrying a weight that never belonged to you. Not a memory, not a person, an influence, something subtle that pressed against your decisions, that clouded your clarity just enough to slow you down. That made you question instincts you once trusted without hesitation. And now, that pressure is gone. You may notice it in small moments, how choices feel simpler, how hesitation no longer pulls you backward, how your inner voice sounds clearer, steadier, more confident. That is how freedom arrives, not with fireworks, but with peace. The energy that once hovered around you has lost its reach. Whatever was being projected toward you no longer finds a place to land. It dissolves before it can attach. And your body knows it. Your nervous system relaxes. Your intuition sharpens. You begin to sense things before they happen again, the way you used to. Aries, this is your natural state. When nothing is interfering, your awareness becomes precise. You see through tone, through intention, through what is said and what is avoided, not with suspicion, with clarity. You are not hardened by this experience. You are refined, because discernment is not about mistrust. It is about recognition. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself to everyone. You no longer feel the urge to justify your direction. You trust your internal compass again. And that trust changes how the world meets you. People feel it when someone is no longer carrying interference. They respond differently. Conversations shift. Opportunities feel cleaner. You are not attracting more noise now. You are attracting alignment. This is what happens when a shadow steps away from your path. The road ahead becomes visible. You are not angry about what happened. You are not replaying it. You are not seeking closure through confrontation. You already have closure. It lives in the calm you feel when you think about the past. It lives in the absence of tension where there once was pressure. It lives in the way your energy now moves forward without resistance. That is the sign that something has ended completely. And with that ending comes a quiet upgrade. Your intuition does not shout anymore. It speaks softly, but with precision. You recognize masks before they settle. You sense misalignment before it grows. Not because you are guarded, but because you are awake. Aries, this is not a defensive phase. This is an empowered one. You are not closing your heart. You are protecting your direction. And as you stand here now, lighter and clearer, you may feel something else beginning to stir. A curiosity, a readiness, a sense that there is one final piece of understanding approaching. Not to reopen anything, but to complete it. Stay with me, because when freedom settles this deeply, it prepares you for truth without fear. and the next moment carries that truth gently into view. There is a moment when truth no longer feels heavy. It feels quiet, almost gentle. That is the moment you are in right now. You may think the name matters because it explains something, but the real reason it appears is because you no longer need protection from it. This is not about reopening a wound. It is about sealing it. When the name comes into your awareness, it does not arrive with shock. It arrives with recognition, that soft inner nod that says, "I knew," not out of suspicion, out of intuition. You were never confused. You were simply patient. And knowing the identity now is not meant to pull you backward. It is meant to release the last thread that still tied your energy to a chapter already finished. There is something powerful about clarity that comes late. It does not ask you to react. It asks you to let go. This understanding does not demand confrontation. It does not require closure through words. It completes itself the moment you see it clearly. That is when the connection dissolves, not dramatically, not with anger, but with finality. The energy exchange ends. What once felt attached loses its access to you. Not because you pushed it away, but because you outgrew it, and that is freedom. You may notice it immediately, or it may settle in slowly over the next few days, a sense that nothing from that situation follows you anymore. No emotional pull, no lingering curiosity, no weight, just space. That space is not empty, it is fertile, because when a cycle truly closes, it creates room for movement, for expansion, for momentum that no longer needs to fight resistance. Aries, this is where your fire changes quality. It is no longer reactive, it is focused. You are not burning to prove anything. You are burning to build. Your energy begins to move forward cleanly. Decisions feel aligned instead of forced. Opportunities feel timely instead of delayed. And the past no longer whispers while you are trying to listen to the future. This is the shift that matters, not the name itself, but what happens after it. You step back into yourself fully, without interference, without distortion, without needing to look over your shoulder. Your intuition is no longer on guard, it is curious again. And curiosity is a sign of safety. You are not hardened by what you learned, you are clarified by it. You now recognize energy faster, you trust your instincts sooner, you choose alignment over explanation. That is growth that cannot be undone. As this chapter settles behind you, you may feel something stirring ahead. A readiness to act, a desire to create, a sense that your life is about to accelerate in a way that feels natural, not rushed, not forced, aligned. This is not an ending that drains you, it is an ending that returns you to yourself. And from here, Aries, what rises next is not fueled by conflict, but by clarity. Stay present with that feeling, because what opens now is not another test. It is a new phase of momentum, one where your path is clear and your energy finally belongs entirely to you. Aries. Before you go anywhere, pause right here with me. Because if this message reached you, it's not just a story you listened to. It's a mirror you recognize yourself in. What you just experienced wasn't about someone else falling. It was about you finally standing free, clear, unblocked, untouched by what once tried to slow you down. And here's the part that matters most. You didn't win because someone lost. You rose because you trusted yourself, when it would have been easier to doubt. That is the kind of strength no one can take from you. If something inside you feels calmer right now, if your chest feels lighter, if your intuition feels louder than your fear, that's not coincidence. That's alignment. So do this for yourself, not for me, not for the algorithm. In the comments, write one simple line. I trust myself now. Let it be a signal to your mind, to your energy, to the version of you that's stepping forward next. And if this message resonated, if it felt like it was speaking directly to you, make sure you're subscribed, because the next message is already forming. This journey doesn't end here. It evolves. There is more clarity coming, more momentum, more truth that doesn't weigh you down, but lifts you higher. You're not behind, you're not late, you're right on time. Stay close, trust what you feel. And remember this, Aries, when you move in truth, nothing meant to block you can follow where you're going. I'll see you in the next message.